The social security sector is already growing by leaps and bounds. We already know that NSSF today is 10 trillion shillings worth. That is minus the contributions by the private pension schemes. Today, we'll look at what is driving this growth and the threats to this growth. It's very nice to have you on the show, Money and Markets. Now, for starters, give us a digest or a brief of how Mazima retirement or pension scheme is working.
Well, Mazima retirement plan is doing well. We have had first mover advantage. We are on 1,250 members, and the saving has hit the roof through 1 billion shillings. That's in 2.5 years. So we've made the case that the informal sector cannot be excluded. Which
means that actually with the people at the lower end of the pyramid, the problem is not necessarily that they don't want to save, but it's a question of the platforms that we avail them to save.
Incidentally, when you look at the FinScope study that came out this year, 2018, it tells you where the Ugandans are saving their money. And 40% of their savings are in what we call IMF, International Mattress Fund. In other words, they are keeping them under the boxes, under the pillow. So until we give them courage, until we give them products that fit them, it will be difficult to formalize those savings. We've seen at Mazima that when we do give them access and security and assurance, then they can move a bit of that money into the formal economy. But the Ugandans save, and incidentally the poor save more than the rich.
NSSF recently released results, and we are saying the fund growing to about 10 trillion shillings. Now, help our viewers understand what this development means, for starters to the savers, and then to the economy.
I probably would want to first say 10 trillion is a lot as a jackpot, as a big pot. But if you look at it individually, how much each person has, then it doesn't really, for example, if the number hovers around 900 to 1 million that are active. So if you take 10 trillion and you divide that backward, you find that people are holding anywhere about 10 million for that matter. So it doesn't really add a lot. If you're going to retire right now in Uganda, you need 200 million. We need to see people's balances move up to try and where they are able to do income replacement. Now, where is this money invested? It's basically borrowed to paper. It's government paper. When we say government paper, it's treasury bills and bonds.
There's an important aspect to that, the 15% interest that NSSF declared to give to its savers or contributors. What do you think, or what do you make of this? I mean, there are those who say it is nothing if you don't factor in inflation and the depreciation rate of the shilling against the dollar especially.
My view is that the 15%, even if you factor in inflation and the dollar rate depreciation of the Uganda shilling, you still have a good rate. I recently was challenged by one of my followers, people that follow me on social media, and saying 10,000 10 years ago, vis-a-vis Uganda shillings at 10% over the last 10 years. I was surprised that the Uganda shillings beat the dollar over that period. If you give the Uganda shillings 10% and don't give the dollar any rate on that, even if you give it 3%, the Uganda shilling still beats it. So this is my message and the assurance that I'm giving. The Uganda shilling as a store of value over the last 20 years has demonstrated that it can store value. Now, I have a caveat. I can't guarantee what will come after what I've said these words, what comes after. But if I were to look at the background, the Uganda shilling has demonstrated that it can hold value.
Now, on that note, I mean, I know for the fact that about 10 years ago, the shilling was trading around 1,900 to the dollar. Today, it's about 3,700 to the dollar. Probably that's where some are having a point of concern.
As an economist, I would tend to say that what we need to understand, economies need inflation. Economies need inflation too. The American government is targeting 3% inflation. The Ugandan government is targeting 5%. So inflation is part of the fiat currency. So if we put that on the side, so even if you go to the dollar, you're still facing inflation. It will happen. So the question is at what rate? At what rate? So if we go by the same trend that we've seen before, I would tell people, do not change your currency away from the Uganda shilling into the dollars, because the return on dollar is also very limited. That you can, and the areas of deploying that dollars are also limited if you live in the Uganda shilling. So I wouldn't worry so much about that. I have a decent sum also in pensions too, but I'm not worried about that portfolio. My message would be, if you start getting worried about dollars and shillings, what it tells me as an observer is you need to diversify your portfolio. So now, it's okay. If you think you take your children outside Uganda to study, start buying dollars, a bit of them, and put them on the side. So diversification of your portfolio becomes critical.
Lastly, help our viewers understand the importance of pension funds in economic growth, especially mobilization of long-term funds for investment.
Pensions are critical. There is no nation that has grown without mobilizing long-term savings. There was a story, I think it was on Yahoo News, that China, as we see right now, has 20 trillion worth of long-term savings looking for a place to go to. And now, then you go to China, you go to Japan, they have the largest pension scheme. The post office pension scheme of Japan is the largest. So no nation is going to grow. If we think foreign direct investment is the answer to helping us mobilize long-term savings, it's not going to cut it. Because when we mobilize long-term savings as a nation, then we can be able to distribute the returns. When NSSF makes money, all the members in the scheme makes money, which means capital stays in the ecosystem. But if we keep bringing in capital and taking it away, we're not going to develop. That's a fact. Then, and probably lastly, is due to an individual. Knowing that life expectancy is shooting up, it's going up. You're going to live 30 years. If you retire at 55 and you die at 85, you have 30 years worth of no income, but worth of expenses. How are you going to finance this? So getting sure that you start putting a bit of your black hair money into your gray hair times is quite critical. And so pensions are critical.